There are hundreds of PC build guides out there, but come on, this is a tech channel. We literally have the name tech in the name of the channel, you know, tech box. You can't have a tech channel without a PC build guide. So today I'm going to be taking you through step by step how to build your very first PC. I've designed this system to be kind of a mid-range, multi-purpose type of machine. So it's not specifically designed for something like gaming or something more professional like video editing. It's very broad in the type of applications that it can do. So I think it'd be kind of a good idea to start with a bit of a parts explanation. So let's go ahead and start out with the CPU. Okay, so as you may have noticed, you can no longer see my face. This is because I'm not able to get both my face and the parts in frame at the same time. But we're going to go through a quick run-through of why we chose all these different parts. Let's first start with our CPU. Over here, we have the Ryzen 3 3200G. This is a quad-core, 4-thread, base clock at 3.6 gigahertz, with integrated Vega 8 graphics. I actually did a full in-depth review of this processor, so if you want to check that out, links in the description. I actually did a review or unboxing for most of these. If you want to check that out, in the description. But anyway, this is a pretty powerful little chip coming in at only about $100. Let's next take a look at the motherboard we're going to be putting this thing into. So we went with the MSI B450 Pro Max. I chose this for a few reasons. One is because of the form factor. It's a full-sized ATX board, so there's plenty of room for expandability. And number two is it's the most reasonably priced, full-size, 3rd gen ready motherboards on the market that I could find, coming in at $115. Next, let's talk a little bit about our cooler. So we don't actually have a third-party cooler. We're going to be going with the one included with our 3200G. So this should cool off our CPU just fine. We shouldn't expect to be able to overclock this processor too far. We won't actually be overclocking in this video, but if you guys would like to see an overclocking guide, let me know down in the comments section below. I'd be happy to do that. Moving on to our GPU. This one's a little bit complicated because we don't actually have a GPU. Now, as I mentioned before, this is kind of designed to be somewhat of a multi-purpose machine, so we're actually going to be running with the integrated Vega 8 graphics in our 3200G. Now, if you are a gamer, you do play games, I would highly suggest that you get a discrete graphics card, maybe something like a GTX 1660. But I suspect, even with the Vega 8 graphics, we should expect pretty admirable FPS in 1080p gaming. Moving on to our RAM, we went with, where is it? Somewhere down here. Ah, yes, here we go. 2 sticks of the Vulcan Z. I think this is 3200 megahertz. Yeah, we went with 2 sticks of the Vulcan Z memory from T-Force. This is 3200 megahertz memory, CL16. We went with 2 8GB6, so 16 gigs in total. And this came in right around $62. I decided to go with faster memory, 3200 megahertz, because 3rd gen or integrated graphics on Ryzen is heavily dependent on your system memory, because it doesn't actually, unlike a discrete graphics card, it doesn't actually have built-in VRAM. So it uses your system memory as VRAM. So we went with faster 3200 megahertz memory, as I said, CL16. This is 16 gigs, which I think is kind of mandatory, especially in 2020. Anyway, moving on to mass storage. We went with, hang on, let me grab it down here. We went with a Crucial BX550 2TB SSD. Now, this is a SATA SSD, so nothing crazy like an NVMe M.2 SSD, but we should expect reasonably fast speeds, much faster than a hard drive. The only downside is that it is only 2 terabytes, which is a lot, but if you have a lot of different files and a lot of different crap on your PC, this may not be enough for you. So I recommend that if this isn't enough for you, maybe get a smaller SSD or even a really small NVMe SSD, and then put your frequently used files and your OS on that, and then use a hard drive for mass storage. But in this case, we're going to be using a SATA SSD because I found that's a nice balance between price to performance compared to something like an NVMe SSD. Moving on to our power supply. Right down here, we went with the Corsair CX450M. So this is a 450 watt power supply. This is semi-modular, so not fully modular, but it doesn't have all the advantage of a fully modular power supply. Like, you can't buy, say, custom braided cables and switch them out. But it does have the advantage of being a lot cleaner than a non-modular power supply. So again, this is 450 watts with a, what is it, 80 plus bronze? Yeah, 80 plus bronze rating, which is pretty much mandatory. After that, let's take a look at our case. We are going with the NZXT H510. I really don't have much to say about this case other than I think it's pretty beautiful. You'll get to see that when I open it up in a minute, but this is a full-size tower. Comes included with two 120mm fans, and all around I think this is a pretty solid case. One last thing I'd like to talk about, I picked up this little Roswell wireless adapter. I think this thing was like 60 bucks, so it wasn't super expensive, but this Wi-Fi, or this motherboard does not have built-in Wi-Fi on it, so if we want Wi-Fi, you gotta get a separate card, which we did. So, in summary, our whole system only costs about 117 bucks for all of these parts. This is not including the cost of any peripherals or windows or a monitor or anything like that, just all the parts you see here. Which I think this is a pretty good example of a pretty good mid-range system. But as I mentioned before, if you do play games, I would highly suggest you throw in a graphics card. Highly suggest you throw in a graphics card, which will bring your price up to about $900, but that's still under the $1,000 price tag that we're kind of shooting for here. Anyway, now let's actually move on to building the system. Okay, so I actually kind of lied in the last clip. We're not actually going to start building the system yet. I'd like to take a second to talk about the tools we're going to need to build the system. So there's only about one tool that is mandatory. Cat. We need a computer cat. If you do not have a computer cat, I recommend you get one. No, but seriously. So for parts, oh sorry, cat. For tools, the only thing that we really need is a Phillips head screwdriver. I have one here. But a few things that are nice to have are some cable ties, or these are actually zip ties, but you can use them as cable ties for managing cables, and then a pair of scissors or some wire cutters or something like that. Please do not use a knife. I do not want you to get caught. Okay, so from here on out, all you're really going to be seeing is my hands. I kind of wanted to get you guys a close-up of what I'm doing, but we're going to start with installing our CPU into our motherboard. Now we're just going to go ahead and open up our motherboard box here. Our motherboard should be in an electrostatic safe bag. We're just going to go ahead and take that out, set it aside. And then the only accessories that we're really going to need to take out of the case for now is our SATA cables, and this is only if you have a SATA drive. Take these out, and you're also going to need, where is it? Oh yes, the I/O shield. I'm just going to set that to the side, and I think for the most part that is all we will need from the box. Now we're going to be using our motherboard box as kind of a electrostatic safe build platform. So we're going to go ahead and take our motherboard out of the box here, or out of the ESD bag. Go ahead and set it on top of our motherboard box here. And we're just going to go ahead and install our CPU. Now we have our CPU here. As you can see, it's in a little plastic case. We're just going to go ahead, take this out. Make sure that when you're handling the CPU, you don't grab it by the pins. You want to hold it on the edges like this. Same applies for the motherboard. You want to hold it on the edges. Now we're going to go ahead and install our CPU. So our CPU socket is right here. There's a little retention arm here. We're going to want to push that down and then out to the side like that, and it should just pop up and come up like this. And then for our CPU, I don't know how well you can see this, but on our actual CPU you can see that there's a little gold triangle you're going to want to match that gold triangle up with there's a little tiny little triangle on the CPU socket. We're just going to want to line that up, and then make sure all our pins are in. Then drop it into our CPU socket and lower down the retention arm. It is easy as that. Okay, now that we've got our CPU installed, let's go ahead and install our cooler. So as I mentioned before, we are going to be installing the Wraith Stealth cooler. That's the AMD stock cooler. One more thing I would like to mention. In the beginning I said that all we needed to take out was the I/O shield and the SATA cables. You need to take out this, and I would also suggest that you take out the motherboard manual. That's going to help later. Another thing about the coolers, if you're not using an AMD Stealth cooler, like I am here, I can't exactly help you depending on the different coolers that you have, because there's different coolers depending on the socket, and then the type of cooler that you have, and the way that you install it. So I would suggest that you check your cooler manual on how to install it, but you're going to see here how to install the Wraith Stealth cooler. So the first thing we need to do is, as you can see, there are 4 screws on our socket here, these 2 holding brackets. We just need to go ahead and unscrew these. So there's 4 screws. Okay, and I would recommend that you keep these screws even after you install your cooler. Same thing with the brackets, because if you ever change coolers, you might need to use these brackets. Okay, that's our first bracket uninstalled, and as you can see, there's screw holes, of course, because the screws are screwed into them. But once we unscrew these brackets, the install process for our cooler is actually really simple. We just drop it in. And it actually has, please come out. Okay, thank you. It has pre-applied thermal paste, as you can see here on the bottom, so there's no need to apply more to your CPU. If you are using a third-party thermal compound, all you need is really about a little tiny key size. You don't need to goop it on there. Okay, so now let's go ahead and install our cooler. We're just going to drop it in here. Take note of where your CPU fan header is, which seems to be up here, because that's going to help when you're cable managing later. I think I might just try to put mine in like this, maybe, and then, maybe I can route this around here. So it looks like, yeah, okay, so we're just going to route like this, I think would be good. Can it reach there? Let me see. So this just drops in, line it up with the screw holes. That's not going to reach, I don't think. No, it is not. That's okay. Hang on. Okay, I think we're just going to drop it in here like this. Alright, so you just want to line up the 4 screw holes with the screws. And then you're going to want to put some pressure. These are spring loaded, so you do need to put a little bit of pressure to actually get them in the hole. And then you don't want to tighten around in a circle. You want to go in kind of a bit of an X pattern to apply even pressure. So kind of, you do need to, like I said, put a little bit of pressure. You're going to go around and a little bit of an X pattern. Okay. You're just going to want to tighten down these until they're nice and snug. You actually can't over tighten these. Alright, perfect. Okay, these are nice and tightened down. We're just going to run our fan header like this. Go ahead and plug it in into CPU fan header number 1. Make sure you can see that here. We have it plugged in for our CPU fan header. Alright, so now that we've got our cooler and CPU installed, we're going to go ahead and install our memory. I'm just going to go ahead and open this up here. Now, on this board, let me actually turn this around so you can see a little better. On this board, you can see that there are 4 DIMM slots, and we only have 2 DIMMs. So, you should check your motherboard manual to see which slots you should install your RAM in, because if you do not install them in the right slots, they will only run in single channel mode instead of dual channel. It actually says it here on the board. It's very, very tiny. I'm not even sure if this is going to get picked up on the camera, but right here it says it has the different DIMMs. So DIMM 1A, DIMM 1, or B2, A2, and B1. They're labeled, and then it shows which of the DIMM modules that you need to install first. So in this case, it is our 2nd and 4th, so this one, and there's just 2 little retention clamps. You want to open both of these. Some boards will have 1, some boards will have 2, but you want to open both of those. Same thing for our other slot, and then we can just drop in our memory. It's easy as that. So as you can see, our RAM is actually keyed here, so you can see there's a little notch, and you're just going to want to line that notch up with the notch on our DIMM slot. You can't actually install this backwards, and then we're just going to put it in, and then just even pressure, and it locks right in. Alright, then same thing for our other DIMM slot. Just drop it in, and if I can get it in the slot, again, just even pressure, both sides, clamps right in. It's easy as that. Alright, so now that we've got our RAM installed on our motherboard, we can go ahead and install our motherboard into our case. We have our case right here. We are going to need to uninstall both side panels, and this will be different varying on the case that you have, but in my case, our front panel can be removed with a singular thumb screw. You're just going to go ahead and unscrew this here, and then this should just pop out like so. Then we're going to set this somewhere safe because this is glass. We don't want it to break. And then our back panel here, there are 2 thumb screws. Let me turn this around actually. We just need to remove those 2 thumb screws, and the whole thing should just slide open. And then inside the case, we should find our case accessories. One moment while I unscrew this. Okay, see, it pops out like so. We're going to flip this over here. And then as you can see in this drive bay down here, we have our case accessories. This should just slide out. And inside you'll find some more cable ties. These are smaller ones. Your case may or may not have this. We have some more cable ties. We have our motherboard manual, or our case manual. You'll need that. And then the rest is just different screws and such. And then you'll need these different screws for installing things like hard drives and your motherboard and power supply and things like that. So you're going to need to refer to your motherboard, or sorry, I keep saying motherboard, your case manual. You need to refer to your case manual to see what screws are used for what. Okay, so now that we have our case all opened up, we can go ahead and begin to install our motherboard. So you need to read through your case manual and see what screws you will need for installing your motherboard. In my case, there are these screws here. And you will also need to see where your standoffs need to be within your case. Your standoffs are these little black studs, and that's what keeps your motherboard off of the metal backplate of your case. So in my case, standoffs are already installed in their right position, so I don't need to change anything, but that might be different in your case. Before we install our motherboard, we need to install our I/O shield. Now, as you can see here on our I/O shield, it has this little bit of a ridge going around it. I don't know if you can see that, but that will be facing outside your case, while this part will be facing inside your case. And then a little rule of thumb for which way it can go. It can either go this way or this way, but it goes this way because, as you can see, there's little circly things here. Just this little rule of thumb, these face down towards the bottom of your case. But another way that you can figure out which way your I/O shield goes is you can actually take your motherboard and line it up inside your case and then figure out which way it needs to go. But I already know, so we're just going to go ahead and install it here. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this, but there's a little hole, and you're just going to want to slide it into the hole and press around the edges until it pops in, which shouldn't be too hard. I say that as I'm having some trouble getting it in. There we go. Okay, so it should just pop in like that. There we go. Alright, now that it's all nice and popped in, we can go ahead and actually install our motherboard. So we're just going to want to drop it into our case and line up all the I/O, which is all this stuff here, with our I/O shield. We're just going to want to line them all up with the holes. Let me take a look here. Stick them all through. Make sure that you can see everything, okay? And then, if you're lucky, your case might have a little peg. I don't know if you can see that, but right here, there's a little peg that actually sticks up through your motherboard, and this helps to hold it in place. Not all motherboards have this, unfortunately, but if yours does, you can use it to hold your motherboard in place. Okay, so now that we have our motherboard installed, we can go ahead and screw it down. So we're just going to take our screws here and go around in each of these holes and just go ahead and screw in our motherboard. Really is just screwing things in. So it looks like there is 2, 4, 6, 7 holes, looks like, so 7 screws, not including the one in the center, and you're just going to want to go around and screw in each of these. Okay, so now that we've got our motherboard installed, we're going to go ahead and install our little Wi-Fi card here. So this is the same process as if you were installing a graphics card or any other PCIe card for that matter. So as you can see, this is a 4X card, so we are going to be installing this in a 4X slot. You can install it into any one of these slots, but we will be installing it in the 4X. And you can see here on the back, we have our PCIe covers, and we need to actually remove one of these if we want to install our card. So first things first, we need to unscrew both of these, which I already did, and once they're loosened, you can actually move this to the side. And this will be different on pretty much every case, but for the most part, you just unscrew a screw back here, and then this will pop off, or some of these you actually have to break them off. But in my case, you just move this like so, and then our PCI cover is the third one down, so we're just going to go ahead and unscrew this. Might have to move over here. Gonna go ahead and unscrew this like so. And then once this is unscrewed, we can just pop this cover off. As you can see, this comes off easily like that. And then if we go back inside of our case, all we have to do is slide our Wi-Fi card in. That's pretty much all you do. Just make sure you line it up and drop it in, and that's it. Well, actually, one more thing. You need to screw it back in. So you just use the same screw that you used to take off the PCI cover. So there's a little tiny screw hole here. You just want to get that lined up and go ahead and screw it in. Just like that. Make sure it's nice and snug. Drop this back down, and then tighten this back up, and that is it. Our PCIe Wi-Fi card is installed. Up next, we need to install our SSD. So there's actually 2 different places we can install our SSD here. We have one here and one here, these 2 different sleds. And all we need to do is we just unscrew this little screw here. We're going to be installing it here on this your left, my right sled. You just unscrew this screw, and then once you do that, the sled just pops out, And then you get your SSD, which I have right here. So it's a crucial 2 terabyte SSD. We're just going to take this out. And then in your case manual, it should tell you what screws you need to install your SSD. In my case, these screws here. So you're just going to get those. You don't actually need to use all 4 because SSDs have no moving components in them, but I am going to be using all 4 just for the sake of demonstration. But all you do is take your SSD, drop it in here. You're going to want to line it up with screw holes, and then you need some screws. You just take your screw, you put it in the screw hole, and you just want to screw in all 4 of these. Okay, so now that we have our SSD installed onto the sled, we're going to go ahead and line it back up with the holes on our case. And these should all just pop back in. Okay. Now that all the holes are back in, we'll simply just screw it in with our screw. And then once that's screwed in, that's actually it. Your SSD is installed. Yep, there you go. That's how you install an SSD. Moving on to the last thing we need to install, and that would be our power supply. So we have our CX450M here. We're just going to go ahead and open up the box and manual. And we're just going to get all the cables that we need. Now, already pre-installed onto the power supply, because this is semi-modular, is the 24-pin motherboard connector and the 8-pin CPU connectors. You don't need to worry about that. And then we also need the AC adapter. There's some more zip ties, which is nice, and some screws to install it with. You need those. And then this bag is a jumbled mess of more cables. And I think that we only need 1 cable out of this. Looks like, yeah, we need SATA power, which is this right here. And then just real quickly to go through the other cables that are in here. This is for a PCIe graphics card or something. Your 6-pin and 8-pin connectors for that. We don't need that. And then a Molex connector. We also don't need that. So we're just going to go ahead, set this to the side, bring our case back over here. And then I like to connect all of the cables first before I install it because I think it makes it a little easier. So we're just going to unzip tie, or whatever you call that, or twist tie these cables quickly. And then we're going to plug it in. It's actually labeled on the back of the power supply which things you need to plug into what. So we will plug in our SATA cables after we tie this. It's a lot of twist tie. Okay. Alright, so now that we have this undone, as you can see, our peripheral and SATA come in right here. So we're just going to go ahead and plug it in. Alright, and then now we're going to go ahead and install. So our power supply will be going in like this. You can either have it fan facing up or fan facing down. I prefer to have mine fan facing down to kind of draw in fresh air from the bottom vent here, and then it kind of has its own little cooling environment. And if you have it like this, it kind of draws in hot air from your other computer components. So I prefer to have it down like this. So we're just going to go ahead, slide this into the bottom here. I'm actually going to turn it on around the back so you can see how we screw it in. Hopefully you can see. But we're going to go ahead and line up the screw holes on the back of the case with the screw hole on the power supply. Alright, and then once we have those lined up, we need those screws from our bag of mysteries. So we have 4 little screws. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Give me a second. And once we have this opened up, we'll just get our screwdriver and we simply just screw it in. Alright, so this one screw here, make sure you hold the back of the power supply up against the case while you do this. It's a bit hard screwing in things with your left hand. Let me see if I can, maybe a little easier if I come around on this side. So we're just going to go ahead, screw this in here. Like so. Alright, that's one screw in. We need another screw here. Alright, just going to screw that all the way in, nice and snug. And then looks like one more, well, two more screws. Just going to go ahead, screw this second to last screw in. There we go. And then the final screw, which goes here. Okay, and that is it. We have our power supply installed now. Okay, so on to our kind of final step before we can actually power on the system is plugging everything in and managing our cables. So we're just going to start actually with our power supply cables here. So we have our SATA power, which will be going to our SSD, our 8-pin CPU power connector, and then our 24-pin motherboard connector. And I think we're just going to start out here with our 8-pin CPU. So our 8-pin CPU, if we actually spin around the case here, I don't know how well you can see it, but up here in the top right-hand corner, over here by our I/O, you can see that's where our CPU power is going to come in. So we're going to come around back here, and I think we're going to run this cable up through here, and then along the side, and then we'll cable manage all of this later. And then there's a little slit up here at the top, and then I think we can just barely get it through. Let me see if I can do this without breaking it. Yep. Okay, now that we have our cable through, we're going to come turn this around here. Hopefully you can see everything I'm doing. A little hard to manipulate the case and plug things in. We're going to take this here. Maybe it'd be better if I laid the case down. There we go. We're going to just take this here, line it up, and this is keyed, so you don't need to worry about plugging it in the wrong way. Just going to take this, and if I can line it up, go ahead and plug that in. Okay, there we go. Now our CPU connector is plugged in. Alright, so up next we have our 24-pin connector, which is this big beefy boy here. And we're going to run this up the side here and then through this hole here on the back. And then one thing I like about this case, actually, if we come around here on the front, is you can see this nice strip here helps to cover up our 24-pin connector. But our 24-pin will go right here. I'm going to bring this through, kind of bend this around. This is also keyed, so you don't need to worry about putting it in the wrong way. And then we're just going to kind of angle that in. And there we go. That's our 24-pin plugged in. And then finally, we have our SATA power. So our SATA, I think we are just going to kind of come behind here on our 24-pin, and we're just going to use the first one. And then I can't actually see, I don't think you can either, but under here we have one little small one and one little big one. The big one is for SATA power, so we're just going to go ahead And plug in our power. There we go. SATA power is in, and we'll worry about cable managing everything later. Okay, so now that we have our SATA power, our 24 and 8-pin power plugged in, we are going to go ahead and talk about the front panel connectors. Now, in my case, they are in a little clear bag like this. We are going to undo this here. And let's talk about the different connectors we have here. Actually, first let's talk about the fans. So in this case, there are 2 pre-installed fans, and as you can see, their headers are right here. They have 3 little pins. Sometimes they'll have 4, but in my case, they have 3. And we'll worry about those later. But over here, if we're coming over to our front panel connectors, here we have our HD audio. It's labeled HD audio, and then this is our actual front panel connectors. And then in my case, it came included with a little splitter here, so you just plug this in to your front panel connector. Oh, that's tight. And then it splits open into, what do we have? We have hard drive LED, power switch, and then our power LED. And then this will plug into our motherboard. And then we have our USB 3.1 connector, and then our USB 3.1 Gen 2 connector. So we're going to go ahead and connect all of this stuff. I think what we're going to do is we're going to take all of these cables, and then I think we're going to run all of them right next to our 24 pin, and then there's a little hole. I don't know if you can see it here. We're going to run all of these through that little hole, connect them up to the motherboard. So our front panel connectors, our HD audio. On this board, we don't actually have a USB 3.1 Gen 2 connector, unfortunately, so we're not going to be able to connect this up. But we do have USB 3.0. We're going to thread that through here. Flip the case around so you can see. Okay, so first let's go ahead and connect our USB 3.0 connector. So as you can see, our connector is right here. It is keyed. So you just want to plug this in, like so. Just clips in like that. And then our HD audio. Let me see if I can find it. So there should be a pin labeled HD audio, which I do not see. I think, yes, right here. Our HD audio is over here. So we're actually going to run this cable through a different hole over here. And then this will just plug in right here. This is also keyed. This just goes on like so. And that's our HD audio plugged in. And then our front panel connectors, which should all go in somewhere around here. Where will they be going? Where is our front panel? Yes, right here. So all of our front panel connectors will go on right here. And it's very, very tiny, but on your motherboard it should say what connectors go on what pins. So you're going to need to look at that, and then from there you can figure out where everything will go. So let's see. Okay, so our hard drive LED will go right here on these bottom 2 pins. And then our power LED will go right above that. This one is our positive, looks like. Yes, okay, so we're going to plug our positive pin in. And we're going to plug our negative pin in, and then we need to plug in our power switch, which will go here. Okay, so that's all of our, that looks like that's all of our front panel connectors.
we're just going to pull these all through. I don't think I'm forgetting anything, but it is possible. Let me just check the back of the case. Oh yeah, our fans. So for our fans, we have 2 fans. We're gonna actually unvelcro these straps here and pull our fan cables through here. And then we're gonna go back and look at our motherboard and take a look at where the different fan headers are. So it looks like we have where are some fan headers? Looks like we have one here. So it should say something like system fan on it. You could have 4 pins. So it looks like there's one here, one here, one here, another one over here, I think. Yeah, right here. And then there should be one down here. Yes, and then right here. So I think what we're going to do, because there are 2 right here, we're going to go ahead and run both of these through this top hole here. I think would be a good idea. So we're going to run this back up through here, out this hole. I think we're going to need to unzip tie this, just tie it, and then up through the hole. Turn the case around, and then we'll run these wires straight down here like this, and set this down. And then we're just going to go ahead and plug these in. I don't know how good you can see, but hopefully you can see good enough. Okay, so that should be both of our fans plugged in. Now we can move on to cable management. Okay, so now that we have all of our front panel connectors connected, we can go ahead and move on to cable management. So I subscribe to the philosophy of clean in the front and then messy in the back. So we're going to mainly focus on the front, and then we're going to kind of just cram all of it in the back. But up here in the front, for the most part, everything is already pretty cable managed. Maybe some of these front panel connectors could be tucked back a little bit better, but essentially you just want to try to tuck things where they can be tucked. And then we're going to be using some zip ties, or there's a lot of different ways that you can cable manage things, but we're going to be using some zip ties. You could use something like Velcro straps or even twist ties. But essentially we're just tucking things away and trying to hide our cables. So let's actually move around here to the back so we can see a little bit better. There's actually a lot of ways to cable manage things in this case, which is pretty nice. So we're actually going to, put our 24-pin connector down through this strip here. And then we can there's some Velcro straps. Feed these down through here. And then we should just be able to strap this whole thing down, which is really nice actually. Yeah, that's nice. Just strap that down, hold it in place. Okay, and then our front panel connectors, we can zip tie those later. This 8-pin CPU connector can go right along here, and there's plenty of little zip tie tie-down points. So we're going to go grab some zip ties here. We're just going to thread these through and use this to zip tie down the whole thing. Like that. And then moving up here to the top, we have our fans. So these are all in place. We have another zip tie, loop it through here. So I can get it through the hole. And then we're gonna cinch that down nice and tight. Run these through here to kind of hide them a bit better. And I think we can just have these sit right in here with our 8-pin CPU connector. Yeah, that should fit in there just fine. I'm just gonna stuff that. Yeah, just stuff it in there. Alright, what else do we have? Get those out of the way. Yes, our front panel connectors. And actually, we'll do our SATA. Oh, I completely forgot. We need to attach our drive. So, included in your motherboard box, I can't believe I forgot this. You should have some SATA cables. Here we have a right-angled connector and a straight connector. These are SATA data, as opposed to SATA power. And we're just gonna plug this in. So it goes in like so, down here at the bottom of our SSD. If I can get it in, that would be great. I might actually need to look at this. Alright, so we just, yep, snaps in there like that. Then we're going to turn our case around. So as you can see, our SATA connectors are here. So we're going to take this SATA cable, and I think maybe have this go under here, and then up like this. And then we're just going to thread this through. And then thread this through here. And then we're going to connect this to SATA port number 1, like so. And that's it, just connecting a little SATA drive. Now back to cable management. Now that we have this SATA connected, we can bundle this up, and I think we're just gonna, I think it'd be a good idea if we just kind of stuck it in here with our 24 pin. We're gonna kind of bunch that up, and then try to cinch this down kind of tight, like so. Alright, so that's cable managed. And then these front panel connectors, we're just going to kind of bundle up here, kind of jam back in here, and grab a zip tie and just kind of zip tie them together, right? Honestly, I'm not much of a cable management type of guy. I just, like I said, I subscribe to the philosophy of jam it all in the back and zip tie it together and hope it fits in the back of your case. But luckily we have plenty of room back here. Okay, so now that we have everything in the back of our case, all nice and cable managed, we're just going to go around here and start cutting off these zip ties. Now this isn't a perfect cable management job, as you might have noticed, but this will be completely covered by the side panel, so I'm not really going to worry about it. Alright, we're just going to tuck this one here behind there. Yeah, so if you take a look at the front, actually, I don't think this looks half bad. Most of the cables are tucked away pretty nicely. A few of these could be done with tucking back a little bit more. But other than that, I think it looks pretty good. So now we're just going to go ahead and close up the chassis, and we'll be ready to install Windows and boot this thing up. So let's go ahead and put the side panels on. Let's first put the back panel on so we can cover up this mess of cables. Just going to take this here. Just sits on like this. I think these should just fit down here on the back. Okay. Hope this isn't too challenging. Looks like that one flipped in, I think. But it, no. Maybe it'd be easier if I flap like this. They're gonna go ahead and close this up. Gonna jam that down nice and tight. Where does that go? I do not know. Oh, okay. So it looks like on this case it slides in here and then you push it in. I see. Okay. Perfect. And then we're going to push these down, and then there's just 2 thumb screws over here. Just going to get these 2 thumb screws screwed in. Alright, perfect. Now on to the front. And then the front is a tempered glass side panel. gonna go ahead and put that on. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we must initiate the pill. Now, I gotta say, that's pretty satisfying. Does this also come off? I'm sure this comes off, right? Yeah, this comes off. I can also take this sticker off. Okay, so this just sits in here like this. Then pops in here at the top. Alright, and then just a singular thumb screw over here. And that's the whole system put together. Looking pretty nice. Alright, so now we just gotta get this thing plugged in, get Windows installed, and we'll be finished. Okay, so before we actually install Windows, I'm just curious if this thing's gonna post. So I got it plugged up here to my TV because I'm too lazy to go get a monitor. Well, let's hit the power button. Let's see what happens. Anything happen? No, wait, did I? Yes, I forgot to turn on the power supply. Don't worry, I forgot to turn on the power supply. Let's see if it boots. That's a good sign. Fans are spinning. I don't know if you can see that. Fans are spinning. Let's see if it posts. Will it post, ladies and gentlemen? Maybe. Oh. Yay! It posts! Is everything detected? Rated, blah blah blah. Yay!
Stand up, stand up. Come on, get loose with the heat. Right now. Think your body till you black out. So get the fuck up.
So hopefully you guys just watched some beautiful glam footage. As you can see, the rig is up and running. If you didn't see some beautiful glam footage, that's because I didn't record it. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure how to outro this video. I guess I just want to say I hope you guys learned something. I know this wasn't the best tutorial in the world, but I don't know, I found my love for computers and technology alike for a video similar to this, so I don't know, hopefully you learned something. If you didn't, maybe I helped you find a love for technology too. If you guys liked and enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, comment, turn on those notifications, and I'll see y'all later.